Hachette Audio presents Slouching Towards Utopia. Written by J. Bradford Delong. Read by Allan Aquino. Introduction. My grand narrative. What I call the long 20th century started with the watershed crossing events of around 1870. The triple emergence of globalization, the Industrial Research Lab, and the modern corporation, which ushered in changes that began to pull the world out of the dire poverty that had been humanity's lot for the previous 10,000 years since the discovery of agriculture. And what I call the long 20th century ended in 2010, with the world's leading economic edge, the countries of the North Atlantic still reeling from the Great Recession that had begun in 2008, and thereafter unable to resume economic growth at anything near the average pace that had been the rule since 1870. The years following 2010 were to bring large system destabilizing waves of political and cultural anger from masses of citizens, all upset in different ways and for different reasons at the failure of the system of the 20th century to work for them as they thought that it should. In between, things were marvelous and terrible, but by the standards of all the rest of human history, much more marvelous than terrible. The 140 years from 1870 to 2010 of the long 20th century were, I strongly believe, the most consequential years of all humanity's centuries. And it was the first century in which the most important historical thread was what anyone would call the economic one, for it was the century that saw us end our near-universal dire material poverty. My strong belief that history should focus on the long 20th century stands in contrast to what others, most notably the Marxist British historian Eric Hobsbawm, have focused on and called the short 20th century, which lasted from the start of World War I in 1914 to the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. Such others tend to see the 19th century as the long rise of democracy and capitalism from 1776 to 1914, and the short 20th century as one in which really existing socialism and fascism shook the world. Histories of centuries, long or short, are by definition grand narrative histories, built to tell the author's desired story. Setting these years, 1914 to 1991.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?